This is Support is Sexy, episode 396, with Stephanie Rance, co-founder of the Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival and vice president of Run and Shoot Filmworks. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here because you know it just would not be the same without you. And if you are interested in learning how to be an unforgettable guest on podcasts, to use podcasting as a way of getting your message out there, not by creating one, but by being an unforgettable guest, I want you to sign up for my free guide on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest at girlonpodcastgift.com. Again, that's girlonpodcastgift.com. So if you're a woman listening who's an entrepreneur, or even if you're a podcast host and you want to be a guest on other shows in order to grow your brand awareness, let people know about your show, let people know what you're up to, make sure you go to girlonpodcastgift.com so you can find out more about how that can work for you. Now, I am so excited about our guest today. I know you say she says that every day. You know why? Because I'm excited every day. But today's guest, Stephanie Rance, is part of one of the best film festivals that I've been to, and it's in a place that is my beloved summer vacation. Not for the whole summer, I wish, but for a week where I bond with friends and really get together and have a good time, release, and just be in a super amazing, comfortable, relaxed, cool environment in Martha's Vineyard. Stephanie Rance is the co-founder of the Martha's Vineyard Film Festival, which, and I didn't even realize this, is now going into its 16th year. And on today's episode, we talk about how Stephanie got the idea for the film festival, but even before that, how jumping into things feet first, as she says, before she has all of the answers, she's one of those people who's willing to live the questions and to be curious about why the answer is this instead of that. We talk about her journey before getting to the point of launching the film festival. Even as she was a top executive in the music industry, Stephanie had other things that she was experimenting with to see what she was going to end up doing as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship was always there. You know, for some of us, it's always in there somewhere. She was experimenting, though, to see what that looked like. She also tells us about the behind the scenes of launching a film festival, how you get sponsors, what you need to present to those sponsors, how the business works from year to year, because you know a festival is usually from a certain amount of time. But what I want you to listen out for too is how to get through those moments, and this is in any kind of business, of disappointment when you put your all into it and it just does not work out. Stephanie talks to us about the moments that has happened to her, how she got through it, and why the universe throws you those curveballs. All right, so now, without further ado, Stephanie Rance. So Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited as well.
Of course. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
You know, I think I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit in me. I think, I was thinking about that this morning. And back in the 90s when I was in the music industry, I used to always do these like little side gigs, and my boyfriend at the time, we used to do these like ski trips, and they were a huge success, and that's kind of how it started. We started doing these ski trips to Vermont for people, and it was great. And then from there, I guess always in the back of my mind, I've had this entrepreneurial side, and my husband has always been an entrepreneur. He's always worked for himself outside of college, so I think it's always been there, and then it kind of crept up front.
It kind of crept up front. That's sort of how it happens sometimes. If you're not one of those kids who had the lemonade stand, you sort of had these moments where you were playing around with it a little bit.
Exactly. And not even really realizing that I was doing that.
Exactly. Now tell us your background and where you grew up.
Yep. I am from New York. I grew up in Queens in Cambria Heights. And I moved to Brooklyn. I was in Park Slope forever. I was in Fort Greene. I was in Bed-Stuy, but Park Slope was the last place I lived in New York City. I went to Pratt Institute and I was a fashion major and just sort of fell in love with Fort Greene and Clinton Hill and stayed there for a little while. It's great.
And now you're in Colorado.
And now I'm in Colorado.
Which is a little different.
Just a little bit. I was in Charlotte. I've been in my whole life. So in my 30s, late 30s, I moved to Charlotte and stayed there for a couple of years. And that was awesome. I think I was just I needed a break from New York. Not a full divorce, just a little break.
A little separation.
Just a little separation. I was just, New York is a wonderful city, but it's also an annoying city. And my husband and I owned a co-op in a brownstone, and and we had a car at that time. And I just was tired of coming home and finding somebody on my stoop, or coming home and
Right.
someone's leaning up on my car. I was just
Or you can't park your car.
Or I can't park my car. And we had both of our kids in New York, and I just kind of knew I didn't want to do this anymore. And we decided, and after 9/11, we were like, you know what, it's time to do something a little different. So we moved to Charlotte. My parents moved there, and Charlotte's a beautiful city, and it's a great place to raise kids, and we really enjoyed our time there. We did. And then we moved to Colorado, and Colorado's very nice and different, and it's interesting. It's an interesting journey my life is taking, but I'm rooted on the East Coast with everything that I do.
I see. I was going to ask you, do you have any aspirations of going to the West Coast at any point?
It's funny. My husband has always wanted to go to California, and I'd be open since we're so close to LA now. But for some reason, everything we do seems to be rooted in the East Coast. So I don't know. We'll see what the universe has in store for 2018.
How would you describe yourself as a young person growing up in Queens and then moving around throughout New York? What was a young Stephanie like?
A young Stephanie that's a great question, was very independent and very curious and never took things at face value. Kind of like my daughter. It's pretty interesting to see myself through her. I was always that kid that questioned everything. I went to Catholic school my whole life in Queens, and I can remember a story. I remember, the nuns would say, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. I think that's how it's done. And I would question them, like, well, how can someone be three people in one? It doesn't make any sense.
What is this Trinity business?
What is this Trinity? What is this?
I went to
Catholic
Catholic
school. You had a
too.
baby through Immaculate Conception, and they would just be like, just believe. So I really had a hard time with just believing in things like that. It was interesting. I was always the kid that sort of questioned everything my parents loved it, but they didn't like it either. I just questioned everything. So I think I've always been curious, and I've always been the child who marched to her own beat and was sort of always a leader, just never really was one to follow in a pack.
How would you say that part of your personality has served you, either when you were younger or as an adult? And in what ways do you think it's been not held you back, but could have been a stumbling block or a roadblock, if at all?
I don't think it's been a roadblock. I think it's been really good for me growing up. I think I've always been one to take a chance. Like, as I look back on my life, I've always taken a chance. I don't know. I've been that person to just be like, I think the way that it might have not been perfect, I jump in feet first. So I'm the kind of person who I get super excited about an idea or super excited about whatever, and I'm all in. And I think looking back, I think sometimes I need to take a step back and maybe do a pros and cons list. But I don't know. It hasn't really hurt me. It's always just helped me. An example would be when I was out of school. I was a fashion major, and I worked in every single department store when I was in college, and wanted to be a buyer, and then worked and then realized I didn't want to be a buyer, and then didn't know what I was going to do. And my parents were like, so what you going to do?
What's going on?
What's going on here? And then, but it never really stressed me out. And I remember when the Village Voice was around, I saw an article, an ad. This is when they had, ads in newspapers. And the Village Voice was like the place to find a job. And I saw an internship at SBK Records. And I had no idea what the music industry, I had no idea. Like, I wasn't that kid who saw award shows and was like, oh my God, one day I'm going to be on stage, except never really thought of it that way. So I said, oh, this looks fun. So I applied for this internship at SBK Records, and I was already out of school and sort of fudged my way. This is before they did all these stupid background checks and stuff, but I got it. I got this internship, and then I worked in the music industry. I interned for a year and then just did it. And I think that served me well, because I could have been the kind of person to talk myself out of taking a chance. I never really thought of like, well, what if this happened? I always thought, no, this sounds great, I want to do it. And I just did it.
Right. I love that. And instead of, like you said, what if this happens? You're like, well, what if this happens? It's
I
just
never
a different
even
kind
thought
of energy around it, right?
Yeah, I just never thought of like, well, what if they find out you're not in school? I just never even crossed my mind.
Right.
I just went there, did a good job, and they offered me a job, and boom. I don't know.
And I'm with you with jumping in feet first. I'm like that. I just had a conversation with someone about that of, yeah, once I decide I'm going to do it, it's sort of full steam ahead. I don't have the other part of it. But then there are times when, yeah, maybe that got me in trouble, but it served me more than it has stopped me.
I think it's good.
Right.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Good. So
I think all experiences shape you to be all experiences, whether positive or challenging, shape you to be the person that you are. You can learn from everything. So I don't think of anything as like a bad idea or a bad opportunity. At least you tried. That's how I look at life. Just got to try.
Absolutely. At least you tried. So so you said you wanted to be a buyer at first. So you went to school for fashion, and that was the path you were on. So what was it that made you decide this wasn't for you? Was it after becoming a buyer or getting some experience there?
You know, I just was never sort of like this 9 to 5 kind of person. And to me, it just seemed too rigid. And I didn't realize what that meant in terms of me trying to be an entrepreneur. It just seemed too uptight for me. And I wanted to work at Saks Fifth Avenue because I thought that was the one that spoke the most to me. But I just didn't like the whole process of it. And when I was in school, I took a PR class and fell in love with public relations. And I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. This is what I want to do. And then me, jumping feet first, went to the woman afterwards and was like, hi, I'm Stephanie Tavares, and I want to work with you. I just was that kind of person, and she liked it. And, she was a white woman, and and this is when I was like, and I still am, but I became aware of my blackness, and I had my Malcolm X pin on and my Fight the Power pin.
I love it.
Like I said, I go all in. So she just thought I was crazy. She loved it. So I interned with this woman, and then by chance, she was doing PR for one of the key crew members on Do the Right Thing. And I got a chance to be a part of this film thing, not knowing anything about this. And it's interesting when you look back on your life, how things fall into place that take you where you're going to go. Because I didn't know what PR was. I didn't really think I wanted to be a buyer. I didn't really know. It was like, oh, I love fashion, I love clothes, I want to do this. And then taking this PR class sort of put me on the path of, this is what you're supposed to do. So I interned with her on Do the Right Thing, and it was great. I got to go to my first premiere and realized this is it. This is what I want to do. I don't know what this is, but I want to do it. But didn't understand freelance in the sense that, okay, well, this is wrapped. Now you got to find another client. Didn't understand that. And then from there, then I interned with Black Filmmaker Foundation, and that was pretty interesting. And then from there, EMI came around, and I've always been in entertainment. It's pretty interesting.
So with EMI, was it music for film or focused more on music at that point?
It was music. So I worked with the number 2 person at the company. And that's another thing. It's like the path took me to where I needed to be. So I was with like the number 2 person at SBK Records, and then EMI bought it. So I was always in constant contact with the CEO and everybody. It was really interesting. And I just totally took it, not for granted, but I just took it as like my normal. It was like, well, how did I get up on the 42nd floor? And I became, it just happened. And I was this guy's executive assistant. And of course, no idea how to do that. So I interned, and then and then someone left the company, and that's how I got a job and sort of learned everything about A&R, artists and repertoire. They're the ones who sign people to record deals, for your listeners, and got to work hand in hand with this guy and worked with Frank Sinatra, and worked with John Cicada, worked with D'Angelo, Gangstar. So it was really, really a really wonderful time. And I think, I tell people, Jesus, this was the best schooling I ever had, because it's hands-on experience. Like that was my MBA in terms of just learning how to deal with different personality types and all these men. And it was a really interesting time. This is before HR was relevant, so it was definitely an interesting,
And the
interesting
film
time.
and the music industry was just an interesting
Buck
industry.
wild,
Buck
right?
wild,
Exactly. But
Wild
it was so
West.
much
If you could become an
right,
intern, you could figure out
and
how
then
to
be
become the
CEO.
president.
Right.
Exactly, exactly. That's what I was gonna say.
So it was a lot of
Yes.
fun, and I learned a lot just in terms of how people think and how deals get done, and because I guess they saw me as like this non-threatening person, or like, oh, she could be my daughter, because I was always a really nice, polite Jamaican girl. My dad's Jamaican, my mom's from Panama, and they just saw me as like, oh, she's just really nice and wants to learn. And I got to sit in on all these big deals. And I remember when Prince came to the office, and that was a big hoo ha ha, and it was just like, wow. So looking back on it, it was like, this is really interesting, and all the knowledge that I learned from doing that helped me to do what I do now.
I was blown away by the mention of Frank Sinatra. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
Frank.
called everybody kid. That was an amazing project to be a part of, duets 1 and 2. Even in my little way, getting to go to the studio and
You
hear all
saw
those
Frank
artists.
Sinatra record?
Didn't see him record. He came to the office. He recorded his vocals in California, and then a lot of the artists were in the Hit Factory. That doesn't even exist anymore. Wow, the Hit Factory in New York. A lot of the artists came and recorded their stuff there, and it was just amazing. He was definitely an interesting character, and the people he surrounded himself with were very, very interesting. Very, those mafia stories are true.
Oh gosh. Everybody's got their crew, right?
Yes, it was interesting. It was
Love
interesting.
it. That's so crazy. I remember being in New York. This was years ago on the street. And you know how New York is obviously very different than LA. Well, both don't really quote unquote care about celebrities, but I feel like there's more paparazzi and all of that in LA. But I was on the street walking to the subway coming from, I don't know, remember where I was working at the time. And Tony Bennett was in this huge SUV. He was being driven, obviously, but he was in the passenger seat or maybe he was the back seat, but the window was down. And I remember the car pulled up and I just looked over and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Tony Bennett. And he just kind of waved. I was standing there like, oh my gosh, me and this other woman, a few people saw, and usually you don't get starstruck by, but Tony Bennett, it's like Frank Sinatra. Those guys are legend. So.
There they are, and Tony Bennett was really nice. He was on one of those duet albums, and he was, they were all nice. Patti LaBelle was really nice, Lena Horne. It was a really great experience to be a part of that. Yeah.
That's amazing. So what year was that around that you were in the music
that was
industry?
In the 90s. I was in the music industry. I started in 1990 and left in 1996 or something like that, when EMI went out of business, or Capitol, one of them went out of business, and then the guy that I was working with started his own production company, and we got to work with and he took me with him, and I worked on Wyclef's Brother and Sisters album, Melchizedek, and that was fun. And then he had another group, an alternative group, Marcy something, but they had a hit song, which I can hear it in my head, but I can't think of the name of it. And that was fun. And then from there, but knew that I didn't want, he was at a management company, and I hated management because it was definitely babysitting. And, artists are not all of them, but some of them are pretty interesting.
Demanding.
Them and their well, it's not even it's just their entourage is just like, oh my God, this is so like not important. So I really didn't like that aspect of it. And then, again, the path that you go on, a friend of mine in LA was like, hey, there's a new magazine coming out called Code, and it's going to be a magazine, about men of color. And I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. And my friend couldn't do it because he was at E, and he recommended me for the job. And then I interviewed, and then I was the marketing director at Code magazine. And that was like an amazing experience. And Code, which was Larry Flint's publication, was ahead of its time.
I remember Code.
You remember Code?
Yeah, I didn't know you were there.
I was there in New York. It was me and another gentleman. He was in sales and I was marketing. And it was just an amazing experience to be part of this magazine, because the mission was just like, we hired, it was all Black stylists and makeup artists and photographers. And it was just a dope experience. And I did this huge launch party in New York. It's funny, I was thinking about that this morning. And I just think Code was just ahead of its time, and it was short-lived, unfortunately, but it was great. It really was.
So when did you get to the point where you and your husband were inspired to host your first film festival in your brownstone in Brooklyn back in 2002? Like, how do we get there?
Where was I during that? So after that time, I was working with a woman who had just left Oprah Winfrey. she was heading up her PR, and she became a partner in a PR firm in New York called West Hill Partners. And myself, I was there, and Dana Baxter was there, and another woman, Crystal Howard, was there, and some other people. And we were part of her team, and that was fun. And then while doing that, I was working on Honey Mac, like all of Keith Klingscale's, all of all his publications, Honey and Heart and Soul and all those magazines that he had. I was part of that whole mix, and it was a lot of fun. But then started getting another hey, I think I want to do this, because my husband at the time was shooting a film in Barbados, and
he's a director or an actor?
He was a cinematographer and a producer. So and at this time we were thinking of having children, but this PR job was just so demanding, and I knew that I would not be able to do, because I'm the kind of person who gives 100%, again, with the feet first. So at this time I was thinking of leaving and doing my own thing, because I had so many connections, and at that time, getting clients was easy, whatever. So he was doing a film in Barbados, and I went with him to hang out, and but it popped in my head. I was like, wow, this would be a great place to do some sort of event. Just thought of it, and reached out to the tourism board, and timing is everything. And they were trying to get more African Americans to come to Barbados and hang out and just be a part of the island, because at that time it was more Canadians that were going to Barbados. So I pitched the idea of a film festival and all this other stuff. And they we love the film festival idea. Mind you, I'd never done a film festival. I knew nothing about a film festival. I'm keeping it real. I'm not even going to be like, oh yes, and I researched. Nope. Feet first.
Oh my goodness. Wait, when you were pitching though, how did Film Festival come out? Were you just saying you could do something and then they said, we like the film?
I think I visited a film. I think I went to one. I don't even know, to be honest. I just think, your angels on your shoulder kind of guide you to the path you're supposed to be on. And again, feet first, not even thinking through and this is before social media. And this is before, social media. So didn't even kind of think through, well, how are we going to do this? Where are we going to get the films from? I didn't even think about the negative. And I don't want to say negative. I just didn't think about the challenge. I just was like, we're going to do this. So going back a second, I did some events for Martel Cognac, and we did something on Martha's Vineyard, and we had a house, and we had a DJ, and free food and cognac. So, it was a dope party, right? Free food and alcohol. Everybody was there.
Right.
And someone by chance had some movies, and they talked to the movie owner on Circuit Avenue to show the films. And I guess in the back of my head, the line was around the corner because there's nothing to do there in the nighttime. So I think subconsciously I had that in the back of my head. So fast forward to Barbados, we were all, everything was going forward. It was great. And I somehow convinced Showtime to be a sponsor, and they were going to give me some film. And then I spoke to the studio. I think it was, I don't remember, but it was the film Men of Honor, and they were going to give me the film, and they were going to send Cuba. I don't even know how I did this. And then, so that was great. Then 9/11 happened, and the tourism board pulled out. They were terrified that nobody would come to Barbados. And I was like, and at that time I had 10 films. And there was this group on Yahoo, this black filmmaker group. And I remember posting about this festival in Barbados, and people sent me $10 for a submission fee and their VHS. And I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting. These people don't even know me, and they're sending me money in the mail and their film. And I was like, this is really interesting. So, Barbados pulls out, and I'm like, but I've got 10 films and I've got sponsors, and I'm like, let's just do it. Let's just do it 1 year. So we could just say we did it and get it over with. And the second year will be our first year, but they were scared. So I said, okay, what am I going to do? And at the time, my husband was like, well, let's just do it in Martha's Vineyard. So I said, I'm going to do it in Martha's Vineyard, not even thinking it through. And the first year we did it in Martha's Vineyard is the location we do it at now, the Performing Arts Theater, which is 850 seats. So we did it in July, which was the wrong month. I didn't know. So we did it there, and only 10 people came, and I was devastated.
Oh my goodness! Wait, how far ahead of the event that was supposed to be in Barbados was this when they pulled out? Was 9/11?
5 or 6 months, maybe. I think that was going to happen in February.
Okay, so that's pretty close considering
it was
all
very
the
close.
Planned. Yes, it wasn't like it was a year out or something.
No, but there was no social media, so didn't even know how I was going to get the word out about this.
Right.
And we did it at the Performing Arts Center. So then Martha's Vineyard. So we had this little silly tent by the by the boat in OB. And our thought was that they'll come to the tent and ask questions, and then they'll go all the way to the Performing Arts Center to see the film. It was crazy. And it was very, it definitely deflated me at the time because, and thank God none of my sponsors came. They were just cool. But I had 10 people come, and I didn't give up. I said to myself, you know what, Stephanie, my husband was like, we got something here. Don't give up. And at the time I was partnering with another person who left after that. She definitely blamed me for the fallout of it. And I think that was supposed to happen as well, because I think I was supposed to have partner. This is supposed to be a family thing. And my husband and I did it, and we did it through his company, Run and Shoot Filmworks, and the rest is history.
Wow. So how did you, so many questions. That's great, though. I love that story.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, just for people listening who might either come into or be in the middle of a situation where things were moving quickly and moving forward, and you pitched this idea and, it's all falling into place, and then somebody or for whatever reason, something falls through the cracks or falls out. How did you, in that moment, can you remember, how did you not give up and think of, well, this is another option? What would you say, I should say, was the key to keeping it moving?
That just wasn't in my thought process. I try to keep it incredibly positive and focused. And this, at the time, was my only source of income. Like, I left corporate America because I was just tired of it, and I wanted to do this. And there was no plan B. I had to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think the fact that the other person that was partnering with me on this abandoned me gave me the fuel to push forward and make it happen. So my advice to your listeners is, I think the universe throws you curveballs to test how serious you are about it. And I'll say this too, it was a different time. It was a little easier, and I had a lot of, I have a lot of connections. So that, it was just different. It'll be a little more challenging. And I'm not saying this to discourage anyone, but if you don't have contacts and connections with whatever it is you're trying to do, it makes it a little harder. So I think the fact that he and I had all of these entertainment contacts, and they liked us on a personal level, made it a little easier for us to keep it moving.
And the 10 people who came were those filmmakers, or these were participants who?
I would think 5 filmmakers and maybe 5 participants who were on Martha's Vineyard.
And did you still do the full whatever you had planned, even though at that time it was only those 10 people there? And I ask that because sometimes people think, oh, well, it's only, however many people. And I always say, no, you got to do it just like you would if it was 1,000 people.
Oh, yeah,
those
the whole
10
thing.
People, right.
Yes. We and we had, I don't remember, I forgot how many days it was. It might have been just like 2 or 3 days, but we had a nice reception at this Black-owned gallery, Cousin Rose's Gallery, and that was really nice, and it was well attended because it was free and there was alcohol and food, but it was great. And we did the whole weekend. It was, you had to soldier on and get through it. We did. It was interesting. So
what was it like? And for everyone listening, we have listeners in 100 plus countries around the world. So
nice.
So OB is Oak Bluffs in
right.
Martha's Vineyard. So I'll make sure I have links to everything so you can hear all these great places that Stephanie is referencing. But also, so what was it like then when it's time to do it again, when you're thinking about year 2 or after the first one, after you got through it? What was the conversation like with you and your husband? Were you thinking, well, we did that, that's over? Or was it like, how are we going to make this better?
It was, how we're going to make this better. It was just, and then, because I had a newborn. My son was, how was he? He was 1 when we did the first festival. So I had a 2-year-old, and it was crazy. And we were in our place in Brooklyn, and I don't know. I just was like, I'm going to do this. I've got something here. And my parents are awesome. And they were just like, don't give up, Stephanie, keep trying. And we did it. We kept trying, and everything worked out. It really did. And I think what really helped us also was that we went to HBO. We have a friend there, and she was really sweet. And she was one of our first sponsors. And I think having HBO as our probably main sponsor back then kind of legitimized the festival and just sort of helped it skyrocket to where it is.
I will say, of course, I can't speak of all of HBO's relationships, or any for that matter, but I have seen at different festivals and events that they seem to be, whoever's there, pretty supportive of independent film festivals and that kind of thing, or have been in the past.
Yeah. I mean, the marketing department definitely is, and I think it helped that, we were friends with these people, and
Right.
and she believed, and she did it. And HBO's been with us for 15 years
Ooh.
now, and it's been nice. It really has. It's been great, and I know because of HBO, everybody else sort of was like, oh, okay. And then when the recession happened, that was an interesting time for us. People still traveled to the Vineyard, but it was the festival wasn't making enough money where I could do it full time. So I was trying to figure out, okay, what else am I going to do to supplement income to even and still do this? So it was interesting, but we never gave up.
Never gave up. So now the first one was in 2002?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gosh. Oh, my goodness. I can't believe you've been back every year.
Every year. It's amazing. Yep. It's
That's
been great.
amazing,
It really
Stephanie.
has.
I didn't even know it had been that long. That is awesome.
Yep. 16 years.
16 years. So what would you say then, when you mentioned HBO, but just in general for people who were thinking about any kind of event, not necessarily a film festival, would you say that having a solid sponsor is one of the key ingredients for success?
Absolutely. I mean, unless you have the money to front it yourself, yes. You need a sponsor. And I think, one of the things, I was talking to a friend of mine about this, one of the things that's lacking in school, in my opinion, is they don't teach you, they just teach you how to be good soldiers and how to get a job, right? They don't teach you how to network and really make connections to help you get to the next level. And I think for whatever business you want to start, it really does start with your network and who you know and making those connections. And with the internet and with Facebook and LinkedIn and all that stuff, it's so much easier than when you and I were doing our thing. I mean, I can remember when I was doing PR, I would go to Barnes & Noble and get like Essence Magazine and look for the whatever, find out
The
which
name
editor.
of the exactly, yes. And then
kind of
call
figure
them.
out the email ad. Well, call and also kind of figure out what's their email address and come up with all these different scenarios. And the one that didn't bounce back is the one that worked. Right. So I think
I remember before emails, people used to actually call and I used to have to answer the phone. Now
exactly.
I hate talking on the phone.
And I think our time period really taught us how to hustle and not give up. It really did, because we had to be creative in terms of how we found people out. It was funny.
What do you feel like sponsors, and I'm sure it's changed over the years, but because you have so much experience with this, what do you feel, or I should say, not what do you feel like, if you were talking to someone who was about to start their own event or festival, et cetera, what would you tell them are some key components they should make sure they have when going to a sponsor?
Really define what it is you're doing and how it's going to benefit the target audience and the brand. Really talk about how whatever it is you're doing is going to affect that company's bottom line. And what's interesting about the festival is that there are I can 2 or 3 other Black film festivals that are out there. And when we talk to it's so interesting how, people always want to find a reason to disqualify you than qualify you. Mm-hmm. Even if you're looking for a job, they always look for reasons to disqualify than to think, oh, well, she'd be great for this opportunity. It's always like, well, so we always got the question of, well, what makes you different from this one? And what makes you different from that one? And, and it's interesting. And my answer to them, and I think that's what kind of solidified the deal, was there's Coke and there's Pepsi. Well, I don't understand what the problem is. Both can coexist. There's McDonald's, there's Burger King, and now there's Chick-fil-A. Like, you understand, like, there's room for everybody, and we are not if you're doing a company that specializes in multicultural marketing, or women for that matter, we're not a monolithic group. We're all different. So
I always think you have one, that should be good, whereas
exactly.
Men can have 1,000 of whatever.
Or you can have Tribeca, and you can have Sundance, and you can have Toronto, but it's like, at their core, they're film festivals, right? And they're targeting a certain demographic. But when it comes to multicultural activations, it's always, well, what's the difference between you and X? And it's like, well, A, it's location. B, it's socioeconomics. Like there's such a difference. Like we're not all one. If you want a certain experience, you'll go to this. If you want a different experience, you'll go here. It's interesting, but we don't let that stop us or deter us. We just kind of move forward with it. Now, so I would think for your listeners, just tell them to really flush out what it is they're doing, how it's going to benefit that company's bottom line, and why it's needed, why it's important.
Now, as a business, how does what are the primary ways a film festival makes money? Is it through the sponsors and then other things, or how does it work throughout the And I should say, how does it work throughout the year?
Well, we are for profit. We're not a non-for-profit. So we make, it's sponsorship and sales, all access sales and sponsorship is how festivals sustain itself. And Martha's Vineyard is a unique location because it's not like doing something stateside. It's an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So it's a little more lax in terms of what you get for what you spend. Yeah.
In a good way.
In a good way. Absolutely in a good way.
And you have the best party every year.
Those are fun. People like the parties. Yes. They are definitely fun.
It's fun, and for me, in my experience, it's not just a regular party. It's so much fun, and it's such great energy. Like, people are there to have a good time, to love up on each other, and all that great stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the joy of Martha's Vineyard. It is like a family reunion. We have people who've been with us from day one when we were a tiny festival in Vineyard Haven at the Mansion House, and they saw me with my daughter in my belly. So they've been with us from everything, and it really is nice. The different clientele in Martha's Vineyard, it's definitely generational. So we get mom and dad who typically own a home on the vineyard, and then their kids, who would be us, come, and we bring our kids, and we get that generation of people attending the film festival. And it's interesting because it's a lot of people who are in academics. So we get a lot of HBCUs, we get a lot of Ivy Leaguers, and we get a lot of people in politics that come to our events, and a lot of actors. But it's interesting because Martha's Vineyard, as you know, is an island where you can just be yourself.
That's right. And everybody's just walking around.
We're just chilling, man. There's no, that's the vibe that we are. There's no VIP, because we're all VIPs, and you can't be separate like that because you're going to see that same person on Circuit Avenue.
Or on the beach, right?
Sometimes.
Exactly.
On the beach.
Exactly.
So you might as well be nice.
Exactly. So what would you say is your vision for the festival at this point? You've been doing it for going on 16 years this year. What's your vision?
The vision is to keep it going. We love doing it. The vision is to rep talent. So we're in the process of seeking out some directors and filmmakers from past festivals to rep them and help them get deals at various networks. And we're doing another festival in DC this June, so it's just to keep it growing.
Oh, what's the festival in DC? Is it just another location, same festival?
Yeah, well, it's only going to be 3 or 4 days. It's called the Color of Conversation Film Series, and this is going to be more long form pieces, meaning documentaries or feature films, and having really poignant discussions around it. So we're going to have themes of, politics and race and African Americans or multicultural in media and women in their hair, because that's always a topic, and things of that nature. So we're really excited about it. It's going to be a really nice festival. That
sounds amazing. Color of Conversations film series.
Yep, and it's in Color of Conversation. Yep, June 28th to July 1st.
Is there a website for that?
Yes, you can go to our website, mthaaff.com, where there's a tab for the Color of Conversation. Okay. And we have a Facebook page, Color of Conversation, that people can find on Facebook.
Okay, great. I'm going to make sure I link to it. I wanted to ask you that before I forget. I'll make sure I link to that. Excellent. So what would you say that your support network looks like? You've been this go-getter your whole life, but who are the people that help you sort of make it happen?
Definitely my husband. He is definitely my rock, and he's been an entrepreneur his whole life, and he's definitely someone that I really enjoy working with. I mean, there are some times I want to kill him, but we keep it in the family, which is nice. My parents have always been supportive of what I'm doing, and it's funny. My mother, I was just there this Christmas. She was just like, "I'm so glad you're doing this full time now. What took you so long?" But I think when you work in corporate America for so long, you tend to get scared to take that leap. And I think for me, what made me take that, I was just tired of it, and I was tired of working for companies and either not being appreciated, or another company buys that company, you get laid off. I was just done with all that. And I think when you reach a certain age, you're just like, I don't really care about making you rich. I want to make myself rich, right? I'm tired of being just a number that you don't care about. Because it's funny, I had a friend say, she worked at a company for 18 years and it took them 10 minutes to lay her off. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. There's just no loyalty. And I'm not saying entrepreneurship is for everybody. Definitely not. But
Right.
I think that if if you have a dream or a passion, you should figure out how to make it a reality. Figure out how to make what you love make money for you. I think it's great.
What would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
What is it? Wow, that's a good question. What has it taught me as a woman? I think as a human being, not really putting my gender into it, I think it's just taught me that I can do it. I have all the capabilities to do what I want to do. That's what it taught me. It taught me that I have resilience, I have perseverance, and I have the wherewithal to make it happen. And I believe that I should use those talents to make myself wealthy. If I'm going to work this hard, I should work this hard for myself. Because when I was in corporate America, I would give 1,000%, work on the week, all that stuff for somebody else, and do the film festival on the side. And then it was like, but it's funny, I realized that the one steady that's been in my life has been my film festival. And it's sort of like when you're dating or you're looking for that perfect guy or that perfect girl. And then you realize, oh my God, this person's been with me.
Been
and
there
you overlook
all along.
All along. And you
Right.
overlook this one person, and they've been with you for everything. And that's how we feel about the festival. It's like, well, for me, because my husband's been an entrepreneur forever, but for me, it's like, wow, this baby has been with me from day one and has never let me down. So why don't I just give it 100% of my full attention?
Right.
And I enjoy it because I look at it as like, for your viewers. And I was telling someone, because they were like, well, Stephanie, what about, you're going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks? And I'm like, well, listen, it doesn't, if you make, I'm just going to say a number, if you make $50,000 a year, right? And if you're doing some sort of activation and you get $50,000 in sponsorship, or you get that in your revenue, whatever, what's the difference? It's still $50,000. Just budget your money the right way. Whether you get $50,000 in one lump sum or you make it throughout the year, it's the same thing. So why not just make that money for yourself?
It's so true. That's such a great point. Thank you for sharing that. And I think too, with, checks every other week is nice. We all love that. But also what I always remind people too is that's not guaranteed either. Like people
It's
think
not.
I like having this because I know it's guaranteed. No, because as you said, you can work 18 years and then get laid off and they'll do
In
it
10 minutes.
Exactly. And maybe give you 2 weeks pay or severance.
Right. Exactly.
So
and I think when you're an entrepreneur, you learn how to budget better. And I think, and with the onset, and it's interesting. I was talking to somebody else about this. With the onset of the Affordable Health Care Act, Obamacare, it's made it so much easier for people to take that leap and become an entrepreneur. Because I have another friend who was thinking about doing it, and she was telling me what they take out every 2 weeks for healthcare, and I'm like, that's a lot of freaking money. Why don't you just sign up for this and get your own health care? It's the same thing. It's like, when you think about everything they take out of your check, you can do it by yourself. So for us, it's just better just to do it this way. So I think that there are a lot of tools now that are helping people become entrepreneurs and take the leap and do what they truly love to do.
I agree. And so many of us now, whether you want to do it or not, sometimes you're pushed to it. So I would
Exactly,
tell people,
you
if
are
you
pushed
have
to
a
it.
great job, figure out something else you want to do now, just even if you're doing it on the side, because the economy, the world is changing.
Yeah, the way it's going now, there's going to be 2 companies on the planet. And that's
Right,
it.
exactly. And everyone else is going to be
wow.
doing different kind of services, businesses, events, and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yes. So in closing, Stephanie, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
It would be my husband, because I would thank him for sticking by me through this crazy, wacky, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I think he always realized that this is what I was meant to do, and for just being that rock and for supporting me. That's what I would say.
That's awesome. And you two have been on the journey together from the very beginning.
Yes, we
the
have.
festival is as old as your children.
Yeah, well, it's older. My son is 15, and again, this festival's 16. So it's it's like our third child. It really is our third child.
Your third child. That's awesome. Now tell us how we can support you. Tell everyone the websites again and social media. As I mentioned, I'll have links to it, but just so people can hear it.
Yep. So the website is mvaaff.com. It's the acronym for Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival. You can find us on Facebook, Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival. We're on Instagram and Twitter. So it's great. Please support. It's the festival on Martha's Vineyard is August 6th to the 11th. It's going to be pretty amazing. We show between 60 and 65 films over 6 days, and we typically have a big premiere, some national release. I don't know what it's going to be this year yet, but it's a lot of fun. And our festival in DC is going to be June 28th to July 1st. So please support.
Excellent. And I should mention, too, as I mentioned, I have listeners everywhere. Just because you hear festivals are an African-American festival or whatever kind of multicultural fest doesn't mean that other people cannot attend.
That's funny you say that, because we always get emails from people who are non-African-American. They'll email us and they'll be like, hey, I'm a white director. I did a film on Africa or whatever. Can I submit my film? And it's like, yes, you definitely can. We don't discriminate.
Well, tell us about that. Yeah, just about how you think about it.
Yeah, it's like, it's funny because we've had winners in the past who've been white, and we didn't get a lot of backlash for it, but their films were amazing. They were really, really great films, and you shouldn't take it away from someone based on the color of their skin. I mean, we get films from like Greenland, like who knew? All over the world. It's pretty amazing with social media. We get films from Africa, we get films from France, we get films from London, and a lot of the films, the majority are from Africans or African Americans, but there's a nice portion of them that are from non-Black people. And if you are non-Black, as long as your subject matter or your actors or whatever deals with that, we would welcome your submission. Absolutely.
It's about the film, about the project,
it's about
and
the
a
film
topic,
and the project.
Right.
And it seems that Martha's Vineyard is morphing into this like multicultural, which is nice naturally. So we're getting like a lot of Asian filmmakers who talk about topics that deal with their experience with Black life. We're getting a lot of Latino, we get a lot of LGBTQ. So it's nice how it's morphing into this sort of like multicultural activation. It really is nice. Organically, like it's not forced at all.
Right. And filmmakers can also go to mvaa.com to find out about submissions, right?
Yes, they sure can. Submissions close May 31st.
Okay. And I know you wanted to tell us too about early bird access to the festival.
Yeah, so we've got an early bird all access special going on now. So people, please, they're going rather quickly. And like I said, you can go to our website and there's a link that says get tickets and you can get your early bird all access. And that means you get to go to everything at the festival for this wonderful, wonderful price.
And that's up until when?
Until it sells out. So it'll be
until it sells out.
It'll be gone pretty soon. So yeah, exactly.
So do it now. Do it now.
Do it now.
Okay.
There's not a lot left.
Excellent. Stephanie, thank you so much. I'm glad we made this happen. Super great to talk to you. I'm excited to see you in the Vineyard again.
Yes. And congrats on your podcast. I'm very proud of you. This is wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't listen to naysayers, because we definitely had naysayers in the beginning when I wanted to do this. Don't give up. Do it, do it, do it. Don't make excuses. Make results. You can do it.
Excellent. Stephanie, thank you. Hold on just a second. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Stephanie. To find out more about her, about the Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival, about color conversations, about all the great things that she mentioned in this episode, tons of resources, right? And some great people that she worked with. Make sure you go to supportissexypodcast.com, go to the search icon at the top and just type in Stephanie, STEPHANIE. Her show notes page will pop up with all of the links, all of the resources, and all the ways to get in touch with her. supportissexypodcast.com and just search Stephanie. All right, so thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you. If you have not already, please subscribe to the podcast. You might think it's a small thing. It's a huge thing. One, I want to make sure you don't miss anything. Also, it helps the show because we get more referrals to other people. People see what others have subscribed to. You know, that whole algorithm thing. We want to make this work, right? Spread the word as much as possible. I appreciate you being here, though. It would not be the same without you, as I always say. So until next time, you know what to do. Always remember, you deserve support. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.